Part 34. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 332. Sun Yuanqing wanted to wait for a while, but it was too late, so he had to say goodbye first. Just a few minutes after he left, Lu Feng came up, looked at Marshal Su and asked, "Where's the big man? Mr. Sun has something to do. He's gone." "Are you okay?" Su Dashui asked with concern. "It's often like this. It's good to go to the bathroom, but it's a bit more troublesome. It's a pity that I haven't seen a big man like President Sunday." Lu Feng sighed and was rather annoyed. "It's okay, he's been busy the last 2 days, so he can naturally arrange to meet again after a while." "Mr. Li," just to be embarrassed, the girl just came over and said. "It's okay, hello." Lu Feng stretched out his hand. The two were polite and exchanged business cards. After a while, 7 or 8 girls took turns and got Lu Feng's contact information, but the hotel phone number was printed on it. There were various ballroom dances at the dinner party. When he was having a good time, Lu Feng also performed a piece of Dukagong method lightning whip, which won a lot of prizes. The dinner lasted until after 11 o'clock in the evening. After signing a contract with President Su, all the procedures were as usual. Due to the large amount, he needed to go to the bank tomorrow morning to handle it. Lu Feng provided him with the company account. The wind in the middle of the night was a bit shady, and Lu Feng was a little drunk. There was a group of people standing downstairs, and Mr. Su seemed to have some hands. He grabbed Lu Feng's hand tightly and said, "Mr. Li, I feel you, it's very powerful. If there is a chance in the future, brother, I will go to Wall Street with you." "Mr. Su, you're older than me, don't worry, I'll introduce my dad to you when the time comes, and I'll make sure you'll get along like a duck there." Lu Feng clapped his chest and occasionally ran out a few words in English. Said, "Everyone is a compatriot, you know." Hearing the word compatriot in a foreign country brings tears to my eyes. "I know, I understand." The two hugged each other and patted each other on the back. At this moment, the brothers were deeply in love, and everyone present was moved to tears. "Go back. Okay, walk slowly." President Su kept watching Lu Feng get into the car. "Mr. Zhu, let's go, I will send you a piece. Then I'll drop by too." "Mr. Su, rest early," Zhu Lidong said politely. "Lidong, with me, I can't treat you badly. If I eat meat, I can't make you drink soup, understand?" "I understand, your kindness will always be in my heart, and it will warm the rest of my life. Go back and rest early." Zhu Lidong waved his hand and got into the car. The windows of the car were all lowered, and the night wind slapped his face, and the smoke burned very fast. Lu Feng smoked half, and the wind smoked half. This is the Midnight Broadcast. I'm your old friend Xiao. Today I bring you a classic deception movie, Deception in Deception. There are too many classic scams in this world. Along the way, Lu Feng and Zhu Lidong did not speak, and listened to the explanation of the film quietly. The car stopped at the entrance of the hotel. Lu Feng got out of the car, looked at Zhu Lidong and said, "Mr. Zhu, why don't you go up and sit for a while? It's a little late. You have something to do tomorrow." "No, that's fine, I'll sober up," Zhu Lidong said to the driver. "I'll go back by myself in a while, you go first." The driver responded with a smile on his face and could leave work early. The two walked towards the hotel lobby, and Lu Feng said calmly, 80 million. I really admire you, you can make movies with your hands. I just took advantage of their desires. I prepared 20 million, but only spent more than 7 million. Lu Feng stepped on a step and stared straight ahead. They will sue. The procedures are all legal, but it's just a lawsuit. Get a good night's sleep, we'll fly away tomorrow. Lu Feng stopped and looked at him and said, Li Nianzu will fly to Wall Street and disappear into the crowd, while Lu Feng will fly to Wall Street and disappear into the crowd. You will get a large amount of money without interest, and you will be invincible in the market. Now the outside world thinks that the fall of GFN Electronics is a sure thing. But who would have thought that this company, which is weak in the eyes of everyone, is about to kill the quartet? Zhu Lidong didn't dare to think about the panic of those companies at that time. If he was the owner of an electronics factory now, facing GFN Electronics state, he would definitely relax his vigilance and be ready to watch it fall. I found that my acting skills have improved recently, and I have learned a lot from you, Zhu Lidong said softly. It's just some conventional means. Lu Feng stepped into the lobby. Conventional means. Zhu Lidong has been in the business world for some years. He knows a lot about the competition between major companies. Like Lu Feng, he has never seen business competition as a spy war. The next morning, 80 million funds were transferred to the account under the name of Lu Feng's leather bag company. At 11 o'clock in the morning, Lu Feng checked out and took the flight to Suzhou. The gate of GFN Electronics factory was very lively during this time. After 1 o'clock in the afternoon, parasols have been placed here, all kinds of tables, chairs, and benches have been placed, and there are even people supplying water on site. There is a sign next to it, which reads the names of major electronics companies, followed by the word huge, hiring. There was a knock on the door of Zhang Fengxia's office, and a female secretary opened the door and said, "President Zhang, those people outside have set up stalls and poached people again." The security guards chased them several times and couldn't get them out. Zhang Fengxia cut her hair short and looked a little more capable. The tempering during this period of time made her face appear more calm, adding an indescribable charm. "Tell the security captain to find a way, or resign." Zhang Fengxia put down her pen and said, "Tell the management below that everything is normal in the company now. If you don't want to stay, just leave." Zhang Fengxia didn't know how many times she had said these words these days. The management ability of GFN Electronics is strong, which is recognized in the industry. It is definitely a very cost-effective thing to poach people at this time, especially for some small factories. During this period of time, the stalls at the entrance were not big factories, but small factories with 300 to 500 employees, making some low-end TV sets, many of which were pirated, producing some industrial waste, and then posting them on major brands. Name to sell. For factories like GFN Electronic Gate, at most, there are more than 30 factories, blocking the door to recruit people. It is almost insulting people on their faces. Zhang Fengxia asked the security guards to drive the people away, but the bosses of these factories all had some money, and they sent some small money to the security guards. It's useless to call the police. When the other party sees the police coming, he picks up his things and leaves. The police leave and come back soon. Totally rascal. Workshop director, 2,000 yuan a month. As long as you can bring the production specifications of GFN Electronics to our factory, you can guarantee 2,000 yuan a month, no less than a year, you know. The director of the marketing department, who has local market resources in his hand, guarantees a monthly salary of 800 yuan, and sells one for 30 yuan. The scene was one after another, and there was quite an illusion of a talent market. The security guard just stood there and watched coldly. He was also here to mess around. Many people at GFN Electronics have this mentality and are waiting for the factory to close down. After a while, the factory door opened, and a group of people from Wuyang came out. Most of them were ordinary employees, mixed with some middle and lower management. Some people walked towards the restaurant, while others stood in front of the recruitment sign and looked at it. A man in his 30s, with a bald head, wearing a floral shirt, with a bit of air, walked over to one of the recruiting signs, glanced at it, and asked, "If you have market resources, you will be guaranteed 800 yuan a month." "What? Brother, can we talk? What skills do you have?" The boss, a middle-aged man with a fat head and big ears, stood up and said, "What level?" The head of the marketing department is in charge of the local market. The man stood there with his waist tucked, his legs shaking. I'll take a look at your badge. Damn it, how the hell can I lie to you here? The man was slightly unhappy, took out his badge from his pocket and threw it on the table. See for yourself. The boss picked it up and glanced at it. It said that the head of the 9 sales teams of the marketing department, Wang Jizi. Oh, it's true, I'm so dumb. How much do you want? Let me tell you, my factory is not small, there are more than 400 people. If you go, the market will be left to you. The boss patted his chest and assured said, let you be the manager. Brother, come to me, I will make you the president. You can be the chairman of my board. Stop bluffing me with some fake names, just say how much money. I came out to work, do you understand? Wang Jizi touched his bald head with his hand. Wang Jizi. An angry shout came from behind, and many people turned their heads in fright. A man in his 40s with a Chinese character face walked over with anger, stared at Wang Jizi and shouted, what are you doing? I'm in a bad mood, I don't want to do it anymore. Okay, Wang Jizi continued shaking his legs. The company has treated you well for so long. What's wrong with you? If I really want to do you, I'll report it to you. You stand here to apply for the job. When you go out, do you take me seriously? The man yelled. This rubbish company will close down in 2 days. Who won't look for it now? Stop yelling at me here, tell you, don't think that the first grade is awesome, you know, Wang Jizi, he cursed angrily. This one, we're recruiting, please stay away, you know, the boss said. Security? Where's the security? The man shouted at the security, I can't call you guys. The security guard turned around and leaned against the wall to continue nibbling on melon seeds. Why do you call the security guard? The boss slapped the table with his hand and shouted, if you have the guts to call Zhang Fengxia out, I'm here, so I don't want to go out and find out, what kind of shit is my fat cow? If you open a factory, you are afraid that you are a shitty deputy manager, get away from me. The masculine face of the national character face turned purple, and many bosses around him burst into laughter. A car stopped by the side of the road, but everyone's mind was focused on the fat cow. No one knew. Damn, don't talk about Zhang Fengxia, you just called Lu Feng out to see if Lao Tzu slapped him in the face, Fat Niu said proudly, in a few years, Lao Tzu's factory will be bigger than this, do you believe it? The door was pushed open, and Lu Feng stepped down and said solemnly, Lu Feng is here, take a look at it. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 333. Although the sound was not loud, it quieted everyone present and turned their heads to stare at Lu Feng and Zhu Lidong. There are not many people who know Lu Feng, but there are many people who know Zhu Lidong in the marketing department. Mr. Zhu, the man looked happy and hurriedly said, are you back, is this President Lu? Everyone was staring at Lu Feng. The missing boss is back. Lu Feng looked at the chaotic situation at the entrance of the factory, looked around, looked at Fat Niu and said, are you recruiting? You, are you President Lu? Fat Niu stared at Lu Feng and looked at Zhu Lidong again. He has seen Zhu Lidong, but not Lu Feng, but Zhu Lidong standing next to him must be the boss. Yes, it's the one you clamored to smoke just now. Which factory are you from? Lu Feng asked. I'm from the western suburbs. What brand? The fat cow looked embarrassed and said, we are OEM. It turns out that pirates are so arrogant. Stop recruiting people at the gate of my factory, you can. Lu Feng reached out and patted Fat Niu's shoulder, then looked at Wang Jizi and said, want to leave? Inform the personnel. The ministry will handle the formalities for him. Mr. Lu, I don't want to leave. Wang Jizi became anxious. People in the factory were panicking these days. He didn't really want to do it. Face to apply for. Following this boss is very promising. Lu Feng looked around and shouted loudly, If you think GFN Electronics is about to collapse, then go ahead and poach people. I have money here, and there is no shortage of people if I have money. I'm here to warn you that the next TV and market price war is about to start, and your days are over. The factory owner present was in an uproar. Does Lu Feng still have the money to fight the price war? The low price of WIPUTA has made them miserable for these assembling and OEM factories, and then there will be a price war? Doesn't it mean that there is no money, and GFN Electronics is about to go bankrupt? The boss present turned pale when he heard this. Enterprise is an iron camp. Anyone can leave or poach people, but I tell you, blocking the door of my factory to recruit people will not give me face. Give you 3 minutes, get out, and those who want to leave, go to the personnel department now. Formalities. Lu Feng stared at the fat cow and said, it's okay to continue blocking here. I can't guarantee which department will investigate your factory in the afternoon. The fat cow was in a cold sweat. Who didn't know that GFN Electronics had a big background? When the ribbon was cut, half of Suzhou shook. Everyone present picked up the bench and loaded messy things into the car. The surrounding staff also hurriedly left, as if Lu Feng was a tiger. No one in the factory knows Mr. Lu's authority in the company. He is a bloody man. I heard that he fired half of the factory in a fit of rage. Such people do not accept threats. In less than 3 minutes, the door of the factory was smashed, and even the security guard stood there straight. Lu Feng glanced at the security guard with a gloomy face, and instructed Zhu Lidong next to him, the entire security department, all fired. The female assistant slammed the door open, panting and staring at Zhang Fengxia. Zhang Fengxia frowned slightly, and said very dissatisfiedly, Xiao Yang, don't you know how to come in and knock on the door? Can't you do the most basic thing? It's not, Mr. Zhang. That, Mr. Lu is back, and the boss is back, the female assistant said excitedly. What? Zhang Fengxia stood up abruptly, her hands shaking with excitement. Lu Feng didn't call her yesterday. The grievances of these days flooded into her heart. She was too tired, it was the first time she faced this cruel world, and there were too many things for her to do. Constantly maintain suppliers, internal management, market feedback, and find a way out for the company's funds. In the past, she thought that Lu Feng was too simple. Every day he went out to eat and scolded people, and the main work was done by the people below. But when Lu Feng suddenly pulled away, all the heavy burdens were placed on her shoulders, and at that moment, she felt the weight of Mount Tai. Zhang Fengxia felt that she was very strong, but her tears could not stop overflowing. She took a deep breath and walked out the door. As Lu Feng walked downstairs, the entire factory exploded, and a word went viral in every office, the boss is back. In a short while, the mood of killing the OEMs in the office instantly disappeared without a trace. Everyone pretended to be busy. Zhang Fengxia rushed downstairs. When she saw Lu Feng, she could no longer hold back her emotions. The whole person rushed up. Lu Feng was also startled when she saw her tearful face, and then Zhang Fengxia rushed into Lu Feng's arms and hung up. Cough cough, Zhu Lidong coughed twice, turned around, and waved to the deputy manager next to him, signaling him to understand something. Lu Feng looked at her with disgust, tears covering his clothes, and asked, "What's the matter? Why didn't you make a phone call in advance when you came back?" Zhang Fengxia raised her head to look at him, raised her hand and hit his shoulder, not like blaming, but more like coquettish. "You know how tired I am by myself, I run around every day, I have to answer the phone after 12 o'clock in the evening, and I have a meeting with the finance every day. People who poached us, the market performance has declined, and there is bad talk outside, and those reporters came to interview me and asked when it went bankrupt." Seeing her aggrieved, Lu Feng smiled and said, "Didn't you do a good job? Didn't you say that many companies are poaching you?" "Yeah," Zhang Fengxia nodded like a little girl and said, "They gave me a lot of money, and they even called me to flatter me, but they have less equipment. What's missing? Without you. Lu Feng. Don't hang on, let's go down, or else someone will talk about it again, so don't make that kind of scandal. Okay. Lu Feng pushed her out. But Zhang Fengxia was entangled like an octopus. I've done so much, and I don't want a reward. Take me to the office. What's the matter? Lu Feng frowned at her and said, you are the CEO of internal management. Is this your job? I told Sister Xiao Yan, she said that this request is not too much. I have been busy like a top during this time, Zhang Fengxia said aggrieved. Oh, Mr. Zhang has a great contribution, let's hold it up, Zhu Lidong said aside. Why did you tell Zhang Xiao Yan everything? Lu Feng stared at her and asked. After all, you have a wife, so I have to report it? Are you hugging? Zhang Fengxia stared at Lu Feng with a stubborn expression. If you don't, I'll talk to other companies tomorrow. Lu Feng sighed helplessly, picked her up by the waist, and walked upstairs. Zhang Fengxia was instantly shy like a little daughter-in-law and buried her head in Lu Feng's chest. Zhu Lidong cried out excitedly. Going upstairs, the doors of the major offices poked their heads out to see. Lu Feng put Zhang Fengxia at the door of her office, stood in the corridor and said solemnly, I didn't have time to explain for some reason some time ago, I'll be back today now. I hope everyone will work hard, and I can tell you responsibly that our funds are very abundant. Many people stood in the corridor and applauded. Lu Feng looked at Zhang Fengxia and said, prepare for a meeting in the afternoon. First, gather the managers of the major departments. This time, we have more abundance. We must first sound the horn of war. Zhang Fengxia nodded very calmly. She felt that as long as Lu Feng was there, it wouldn't matter if the sky fell. Half an hour later, the largest conference room was full. Unlike Zhang Fengxia's meeting some time ago, everyone sat upright today, with solemn expressions on their faces. In the office, Lu Feng learned about the recent events in the factory. He did not expect that his disappearance would cause so many chain reactions. It can also be seen from here that Jiafeng Electronics has not yet grown its bones, and needs Lu Feng as the backbone, and the industry competition is huge. As soon as he leaves, there is an immediate danger that the house will collapse. Before, in order to stabilize the supplier, we changed the 3-month payment for goods into a 1-week payment. The original loan of 9 million yuan obtained from the mortgage machine is less than 4 million, Zhang Fengxia said helplessly. It doesn't matter. Tomorrow, we will officially notify those suppliers and change the bill to every 3 months, and a large amount of money will be transferred tomorrow. Lu Feng looked down at the document and said. How much? Lu Feng looked up at her and said, 80 million. 80 million. Right. Where did all the money come from? Zhu Lidong smirked and said, you will find out after watching the news in a few days. There was a knock on the office door, and a girl walked in and said, Mr. Lu, the conference room is ready, and all the heads of departments are here. Okay, I'll go right now. Lu Feng stood up, sorted out the folders in front of him, put them aside, and said, let's go. Going downstairs, to the next building, there were 2 girls standing at the door of the conference room. When they saw Lu Feng approaching, they stretched out their hands and opened the 2 doors. As Lu Feng stepped into the conference room, the people present stood up instantly, and there was thunderous applause. Lu Feng stood at the door, and his eyes swept across everyone's faces. These people did not dare to look at them. They were only facing Zhang Fengxia, a young manager. These old fritters are all very slick, and they are not convinced in their hearts, but facing Lu Feng, they are not so arrogant, and the sharpness of this young man convinced them. The applause lasted for a full minute before Lu Feng sat on the main seat, with Zhang Fengxia and Zhu Lidong sitting on both sides. There were a lot of participants today, and a wired microphone was placed in front of Lu Feng. A lot of things have happened recently. I heard a lot from President Zhang just now, and a lot of management members have left, Lu Feng said with a blank face. No matter who leaves, no matter what you are thinking now, Lu Feng, are back. High-speed text handwriting returns to the 1989 chapter list. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 334. For those who are lacking in the post, the personnel department will find a way. If you can't do it, then let me go. From tomorrow, for some people who are slack at work, like today's security guards, the punishment will be doubled. Fired, how many are fired? The market environment is changing and the competition is becoming more and more fierce. I just took a look. Some people in the business department are starting to take rebates. For this kind of thing, there must be a team, fight together, and the internal management is strict. The attendance award proposed at the last meeting, it will be implemented from the 1st of next month. You don't need to think too much about financial matters. I know that many people in finance secretly leak data to the outside world. Otherwise, people in the whole factory will not know about it. It's going to this extent. I'll just say a word here. Either settle down and work hard, or get out. Many people are very interested in finance, and many people are inquiring privately. Can the company last until next month's salary payment? I'll tell you directly, tomorrow will be 80 million, and the last time it was in the market terminal. We are defensive, this time we have to take the initiative. Yes, take the initiative to do them. The 20th of this month shall prevail. I asked the commercial department, advertising and marketing planning to make different plans for different regions. This time there are only 3 markets, Jiangsu, Shandong, and Hebei. Are there any other questions? Lu Feng asked. Mr. Lu, should we wait a little longer? Zhu Lidong said, I want to expand the market in Henan, so that the data in the market is better, and the competitiveness in Henan is relatively small. What is the competitiveness of these 3 places? The 2 higher brothers in Shandong are not enough, and the Jiangsu pandas are getting old. What is there in Hebei? Lu Feng leaned on the chair and threw his pen on the table. Don't be afraid, this time we will mainly launch high-end products, the 29-inch color TVs that were mass-produced before, and at the same time we will push the 23-inch TVs to the bottom of the market. Zhu Lidong scratched his head with his hands. In Lu Feng's eyes, there was no rival when he looked around, but Haier and he sense were still quite competitive locally. The meeting was mainly about internal management. During this period of time, it was very lax. Zhang Fengxia alone might not be enough. Lu Feng put forward many requirements for internal management. Especially when it comes to testing. If they don't meet the standard, they will be fired and let them try. If they don't understand the truth, these people will only become more and more serious. A meeting lasted for more than 4 hours, one department at a time, and after the meeting ended, everyone present was sweating on their backs. In the afternoon, Su Dashue felt a little regretful that Lu Feng didn't see Sun Yuanqing last night. He wanted to set up another dinner tonight, sit down and have a good chat, and let President Xue inform him. President Xue made 4 or 5 calls to the hotel but no one answered, so he went straight to the hotel and asked at the front desk of the hotel. Lu Feng checked out and left in the morning. What? Check out and leave? Mr. Xue had a very bad premonition hovering in his mind, and a cold air rushed from his heels to the back of his head. You didn't say anything when you left? Do you have your personal contact information? Sir, we don't know this, you have such a good relationship with him, you should have his contact information. President Xue was dumbfounded. Lu Feng told him that he had just returned to China and had no contact information. he would tell him the contact information of the United States in a while. But never said. Where did he go? We can't tell you, we need to keep it secret. Mr. Xue grabbed his hair with his hand. At this moment, he didn't know how to explain to Mr. Su and Mr. Sunday. After thinking for a while, he said, "I'll use your phone." "Yes, sir." Mr. Xue picked up the phone and called Mr. Su's office. After the call was connected, Mr. Xue took a deep breath and said, "Mr. Su, it's me, Xiao Xue. What's wrong? By the way, ask Mr. Li, is the rebate of our money coming the day after tomorrow, or the day after tomorrow?" "Mr. Su, Mr. Li is gone." "What? Who killed it?" the other end of the phone yelled. "I didn't die, I ran away, checked out, and left, and I don't know where to go." When President Su heard the news, it was like a thunderclap. He leaned back on the chair and his eyes were straight. "Mr. Su? Are you all right? Quick! Call the police, go to the bank to check the whereabouts of the funds, and apply for an emergency freeze, quick!" Mr. Su leaned on the chair and gasped heavily, covering his chest with his hands. He felt that he couldn't live any longer. That was 80 million in cash, which was basically emptied of 3 companies before they gathered together. He paused for a while, then called Sun Yuanqing to tell the story again, and Sun Yuanqing took it on the spot. Su Dashui is a private company. It is his own business to lose money. He is the boss of a state-owned enterprise. Such a large sum of money is enough to take his hat off. The 2 companies called the police at the same time, and traced through the bank that the funds had entered the account of the Shenzhen company. They have not moved, and have applied to the local bank for freezing. Fortunately, the money is still there. Sun Yuanqing and Su Dashui are definitely famous people in the local area. The 2 companies were deceived and quickly became gossip in the local business circle. Some people said they were deceived by 100 million yuan, and some people were deceived by 50 million yuan. There are all kinds of data. The reporter smelled the gossip for the first time, and the external contact numbers of the 2 companies were almost overwhelmed. Compared with the liveliness of Sichuan, Suzhou is even more lively. Lu Feng, who has been missing for almost a month, is back, and he announced in a high-profile manner that he has a large amount of money and is about to launch an attack on the TV terminal market. As soon as the news came out, people who had been bad at GFN Electronics all day were taken aback, especially Hoken Copper. Under the night, the telephone contacts between major companies are extremely frequent, and the words Lufeng and GFN Electronics will appear in the conversation. Lufeng is back with a lot of money. I'm just curious, where did he get the money? GFN Electronics finances were leaked to the outside world. The first startup capital was 50 million. Where did the money come from until now? Is this thing printing fake money? Burn 50 million, I heard that the mortgage loan of 9 million is about to bottom out, and now I have got another 80 million. This industry is really not something that ordinary people can play. He has invested as much as he has, and now he has not seen any money back. How can he be so rich? It's all about loans, and I just took out 100 million. I really admire this guy. He talks about it and makes money everywhere. Do you think GFN Electronics can survive this time? I don't know, the competition in this industry has begun to heat up. I listened to an industry lecture some time ago, and now the prices of imported TV sets have been reduced. After everyone finished talking, there was only one thing to say to Lu Feng, that was too humming cruel. In Hoken Copper's office, Mr. Li stood in front of the window smoking a suffocating cigarette, his eyes were slightly dark, and Li Yelong sat there with frowning, next to several senior executives of the company. What are they going to do? All this can be met with a liar. I can see that Li Nianzu is what Lu Feng pretended to be. He was cheated of 80 million over there, and he earned 80 million here. At this time, it's basically a showdown, it must be him. President Li sighed and said, it's impossible to prevent, we have no chance. Dad, how come there is no chance? The next step is the price war at the market terminal. Chang Hong's funds are taken away, what to fight? It will only be hammered on the ground by Vipta. Chang Hong is our largest partner. As Vipta sales increase, he is the market leaders, especially in the supplier segment. Mr. Li lit another cigarette and continued to talk to the end. Huang Yowei can do it without any worries. This time, with the reshuffle of the electronics industry, the suppliers will also be reshuffled. Li Yelong looked ruthless, stood up and said, Dad, do you want to mess with him? Stupid, Mr. Li shouted sharply, is Lu Feng an ordinary businessman? Don't say you killed him, you just broke his arm. Believe it or not, you will find out it's you the next day. Then what to do? Just watch him show off his power. One will die. With the rise of GFN Electronics, I don't know how many companies will die, and I won't be sentenced for long. Within 10 years, you will be fine. Mr. Li seems to have seen his own tomorrow. Li Yelong said, remember one thing, Hokan Copper can't fall into Lu Feng's hands. Dad, leave the company to me. I have followed you all these years. Although I am cynical, I can feel that there is a power hidden in me. I am definitely a genius in business, Li Yelong said confidently. You are a genius of a ghost. Mr. Li stared at him and scolded, I tell you, don't disturb the company, listen to Dad, you can go to the dance hall every day with peace of mind, find a few little girls, and do it with peace of mind. Your business, although this is not good, it saves money. Mr. Li felt that the company must not be handed over to Li Yelong. His commercial talents are really mediocre, or even mediocre, especially for Lu Feng, who will be deceived. None. Dad, let me try. Okay, it's getting late, you can go back and rest, President Li ordered. The news from all sides exploded, and Lu Feng's phone calls were also non-stop. After 9 o'clock in the evening, the factory was still brightly lit. After the meeting in the afternoon, the personnel department fired many people in the evening. Everyone is full of energy now. After Lu Feng read and signed some documents, the phone on the table rang. Who is it? Lu Feng said helplessly. It was the office next to him that helped him filter out some unnecessary calls. Me, Huang Yowei, the other end of the phone said coldly, what are you doing? Can you save me some snacks? What's wrong with me? Lu Feng was also aggrieved, and said, I just came back, you called me, just like this. Did I steal or rob? You lied, come to my office in 10 minutes. Huang Yowei hung up the phone after he finished speaking. High-speed text handwriting returns to the 1989 chapter list. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 335. Lu Feng put down the phone and felt helpless. He didn't need to ask, he knew that it was there to report the case, and he had already contacted the Public Security Bureau here to help solve the case. I sorted out the contract, put it in my bag, and drove downstairs to the municipality. There were only solitary street lamps left on both sides of the street, and the municipal building was still lit. Lu Feng parked his car and walked in with great strides. Pushing open Huang Yowei's office, sure enough, there were several people in police uniform sitting across from him. Seeing Lu Feng coming, Huang Yowei said, yes, just him, the criminal suspect. What criminal suspect? Lu Feng called out. Mr. Lu, we received a police report from Sichuan. Recently, there was a huge fraud case, which has something to do with you. We found out that you are the actual controller of the account of this leather bag company. A police officer looked at Lu Feng and said. I didn't cheat. Lu Feng hurriedly opened the bag, took out something, put it on the table and said, this is the contract, the formal procedures, and their seal confirmation, but they just want to break the contract. A few people took a look at the contract, and the contract was indeed fine. It was clearly written, sealed, signed, and everything was available. Maybe they made a mistake there. Lu Feng sat down and sighed. They just regretted it and wanted to take this contract back. As for the frozen account, I will fax the contract tomorrow and it will be unfrozen naturally. If the other side can't provide further evidence, this case is at most a dispute case, and we will reply there. Just tell the truth. Okay, Secretary Huang. The two stood up politely and left. Huang Yowei picked up the contract on the table and looked at it, then threw it on the table and said, I asked you to take the initiative, so you will do this. 80 million yuan, the cash flow of Changhong, Hokan Copper and Su Dashui has been exhausted. The maximum duration of this contract is 3 months, which is enough for me to do a great job, Lu Feng said solemnly. It's also because of your conscientiousness, the contract is fine, otherwise you really can't escape. Huang Yowei opened the drawer, took out a pack of cigarettes, lit one and said, can you earn these 80 million back in 3 months? I'm sure I won't burn all this money. As long as I win the next battle, I'll get a sip of blood back. Lu Feng sighed. GFN Electronics owes too much debt now, the previous 200 million, plus the current 9 million, and Zhuang Yuntian's 50 million. What are you sighing? Huang Yowei leaned back on the chair and said, you have done a good job. Lack of money, do you think I am rich or poor? Lu Feng sighed a little. Call me poor, I can use tens of millions of funds at any time. Call me rich, I owe the bank a lot of debt. Anyway, it's just richer than me. I originally wanted to move Hokan Copper Industry recently. I thought about it and waited until after you started the war. Huang Yowei pondered for a while and said, as soon as Hokan Copper Industry is caught, the Copper Industry Association will it's abolished, and when the time comes, it will be a large area with a large number of enterprises such as Changhong and Panda. So what? If there is a short-term chaos in the market, I hope you can stabilize it. Huang Yowei stared at Lu Feng expectantly. Lu Feng looked at him and nodded, understood. When are you going to start? The middle of the month. Isn't that just these few days? I feel it, you are very confident. Lu Feng grinned. Now, he has enough confidence to press all the domestic brands on the market and beat them to the ground. The two talked a lot, from the market environment to national policies. Some ideas proposed by Lu Feng made Huang Yowei's eyes shine, and even shocked him. Especially in terms of market opening, Lu Feng couldn't stop talking until he felt Huang Yowei's shock. Lu Feng, what education do you have? I graduated from elementary school. Lu Feng's voice was a little less confident. Are these things you observed yourself? It's all from what people say, and it's just reading newspapers and news. Lu Feng hurriedly said, nonsense. It's just that your education is too low. Huang Yowei sighed with some cherished talent, and said, if you have a high school degree, I will definitely bring a talent like you to the official road to serve the people. Lu Feng hurriedly waved his hand and said, I'm not suitable, I'm suitable for serving the RMB. Stop talking about this, it's getting late, go back. Huang Yowei stood up and picked up his jacket and put it on his body. The next day, all the newspapers were overwhelmingly publicizing two things. First, Changhong Group was defrauded of 80 million yuan and called the police overnight. Second, Lu Feng, the chairman of GFN Electronics, who had been missing for a month, came back. When everyone saw these two news, the first thing they thought was, GFN Electronics has not closed down yet. Some time ago, the city was full of ups and downs. Many people thought that GFN Electronics had gone bankrupt. However, now it is announced that Lu Feng will take the initiative to attack after his return. The news of Changhong being defrauded of 80 million has been clarified in the newspaper published at noon. Sun Yuanqing personally came forward to meet the reporter, saying that these are all rumors. Read. Absolutely do not admit to being deceived. and Sun Yuanqing said that he had explained and reported to the State-Owned Assets Supervision and Administration Commission of the province, and finally gave a speech to reporters, describing his understanding of the current industry. The return of Lu Feng is a shock to the entire industry, and many people already know some of Chang Hong's situation in private. Xiao Anfan flipped through today's newspaper. From morning to noon, for him, it was a process of falling from the first floor of hell to the 18th floor. Lu Feng is back. Chang Hong was deceived. The news one after another made him a little unbearable. This month sales continued to decline, from the highest monthly sales of 50,000 units to less than 10,000 units now. The money that Anfan high-end electronics brought from overseas is about to burn out. Throughout the day, various news exploded in the industry, and there were even more rumors about Chang Hong being deceived. Lu Feng provided the contract to the bank. The emergency frozen funds have been unfrozen and can be transferred to Jia tomorrow. On the company account of Feng Electronics. 2 meetings were held in the morning to finalize the marketing plan, and 4 meetings were held in the afternoon to sort out all aspects of transportation, products, subsidies, and market analysis. Dropping the price of a 27-inch color TV by 200 yuan in one go would be a price that swept the market. Although the subsidy for each set was as high as 200 yuan, Lu Feng felt that with high-value raw materials such as alloy copper, the monopoly market is broken, and prices will plummet. The marketization of the price of copper raw materials will definitely drive the price of other raw materials to dive, and a lot of costs will be freed up at that time, which is profit. With some layout changes in the terminal market, many companies feel that Feng Electronics has a big move next, and many companies are already quietly preparing. On May 17, 1991, Wypta launched a promotion at 1,672 points of sale in 3 provinces at the same time, and was listed on the local Life Weekly Guide, local noon news on that day. Zhu Lidong held a press conference and said at the meeting that this time, he would break the low price and make TV affordable for ordinary people. The next day, Skyworth, Panda, Konka, and TCL followed suit, and a price war kicked off. It wasn't until the 3rd day that Chang Hong announced a price cut, but this year it only dropped 50 yuan. The factory was brightly lit, the machines were non-stop 24 hours a day, all the workers worked in 3 shifts, and trucks after trucks of goods were pulled out of the workshop. The daily production of 3,500 units is already the peak of the productivity of the entire factory. Headline of Daily Life: the fierce competition of TV sets is beneficial to the public, and we recommend Wypta 27-inch color TV. Observation Weekly: Chang Hong is obviously lacking in strength. Whether the domestic big brother can keep his position, I am afraid it is enough. The factory seems to have regained its former vitality. The banners at the door will be changed every day, and the people in the marketing department will hang the daily sales data on the door. This is their glory. Yesterday sold over 10,000 units. Lu Feng looked at this data. He knew that he lost 2 million yesterday, which is equivalent to losing a small factory in one day. The same is true for other companies. Everyone is reluctant to bear the pain. Wypta is in these 3 provinces, killing crazy. In the conference room, everyone's faces were a bit tired, but there was excitement in the depths of their eyes. Zhu Lidong held the report in his hand and read, in 7 days, the sales data is more than 89,400 units, all the goods in the warehouse have been emptied, and the current situation is that production cannot be produced, and only 3,500 units per day. Tower. The manager of the production department hurriedly said, Mr. Liu, we have stockpiled the goods at the dealer's side, and the production should still be on the way during this time, so the sales data of less than 90,000 units will not cause out of stock. And we're really at the limit of production. Lu Feng glanced at the list and asked, are some places starting to run out of stock? Some townships have indeed started to run out of goods, transportation is inconvenient, and the cost of adjusting goods is also high. Try to coordinate as much as possible. It's inconvenient for shipping, and no one can do anything about it. Lu Feng put down the list in his hand and asked, is there any sales of other brands? In these 3 provinces, our sales are absolutely leading, especially in Jiangsu. Our market share has reached 46%. Zhu Lidong was very excited when he said, absolutely overwhelm the heroes. This market share is within Lu Feng's vision. After thinking about it, he asked, how about Jiao Unfan's factory? It's about to collapse. I heard that I could buy about 10,000 units last month, and now there are only a few hundred left. About to collapse? Lu Feng sneered. He was planning to make a move on Jiao Unfan, but he didn't expect that he would fall down before he could do it. High-speed text handwriting returns to the 1989 chapter list. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 336. With the news that Unfan's high-end technology was insolvent, the entire industry was shaken. This fierce battle has only started 8 days, and one family has already fallen. Many people are reluctant to believe that it is such a result. 2 young people, one is a mud-legged man from a small city, and the other is an elite who returned from studying abroad. As a result, the elite fell first. Regarding the question of whether the mud-leg is still an elite, many people in private and many media in the open began to argue, and the wording between the parties became more and more spicy, and even a lot of public figures began to jump up. The elite returning from the United States was defeated by a muddy leg. We should reflect on the current state of the domestic market. Is it really free? Being overly superstitious about the status of returnees and not focusing on ability is just talk on paper. At the beginning, Jiao Unfan and Lu Feng had a very exciting debate. Looking at it now, Lu Feng has seen his failure at that time. He is a proud cock and thinks he is Phoenix. Nanfang Daily, $30 million have been burned for 8 months. Returnees need to understand the domestic market situation, instead of blindly using their own thinking to force the market to obey. Economic Watch, Unfan's high-end technology has become insolvent, and GFN Electronics has no problem at all. It is reported that it has long been insolvent, but there is some kind of force behind it. The news poured in like snowflakes. Jiao Unfan has not slept for 2 days. 2 months ago, he noticed that there was a problem with the market positioning, and it was difficult to increase sales. At that time, he pinned his hopes on Mr. Li and the others. If Lu Feng was killed, he would be able to live, at least give him time to sell this mess. But no chance. There were a lot of newspapers on the table. He read all the newspapers about him and Lu Feng. Jiao Unfan was not reconciled. He couldn't understand that resources like himself, the circles he was involved in, and the help from his family were nothing short of perfect. The place is right and the hole is occupied. Actually lost. Mr. Jiao, I've settled my salary, then, I'll go first, the general manager walked in and said. Jiao Unfan waved his hands angrily, scolded him, get out, picked up the newspaper in his hand and glanced at it, and finally dialed the phone number of Lu Feng's office on the landline next to him. Which one? Lu Feng answered the phone and asked. It's me. The voice on the other end of the phone was extremely decadent. But I could hear that there was too much unwillingness hidden in my throat. Hearing this voice, Lu Feng raised his head and thought for a while, then asked, Jiao Unfan. You actually heard it. It seems that I carry a lot of weight in your heart. Jiao Unfan found a trace of solace. You have a very magnetic voice, aren't you busy with bankruptcy and liquidation? Why do you have the heart to call me? Lu Feng flipped through the report in his hand and asked, what? Want me to comfort you? Find you a drink. Don't drink. I'm too busy now, I don't have time. Jiao Unfan didn't expect Lu Feng to be like this. He thought that Lu Feng was very proud at this time, and then laughed at him fiercely. You must be very proud now, Jiao Unfan sneered, finally killed your biggest opponent. The biggest competitor, Lu Feng frowned, his face full of question marks, and asked, "You are not my competitor either. Let's not talk about the different market positioning of our two, just your sales volume of tens of thousands of units a month, is not the same level, because we are about the same age. Some people in the industry compare us, but it has nothing to do with competition. If I really competed, your company would have gone bankrupt long ago." For Jiao Anfan, this is a blow to the head. He has always regarded Lu Feng as his biggest competitor and wanted to kill him, but people didn't care at all. What could be more humiliating than this? Jiao Anfan was holding the phone handle in his hand, and it rattled as he squeezed it. His face had turned the color of pig liver, and the veins on his neck burst out, as if he was going to eat a person. "You are not far from bankruptcy, right? As far as I know, you are all in debt now." Jiao Anfan gritted his teeth and said, "It's just that the bank didn't urge you. I won't bother you with this. Do you know why you went bankrupt?" Lu Feng closed the statement in his hand. He knew very well that the other party was not convinced. "Because there are rubbish like you who are pushing the lower limit of the market." "Wrong, it's your arrogance that defeated you. I have obtained a copy of your factory's information. You are completely in accordance with the standards of the United States. The cost of workers is too high, and there is not much work, and the cost is too high. Second, it's you who always thought you were high-end, didn't you? To get a practical thing like a TV, you have to add a bit of conspicuousness. Do you know the meaning of luxury? Luxury is a conspicuous thing, which refers to the psychological desire of people after meeting their physical needs. Needs determine their social class and status. Your model can definitely work in the United States. There are a lot of middle classes there and strong consumption power. You took a look from there and took it out of the way. How many people in China can consume this level of products? Have you done any research?" Jiao Anfan took a deep breath and said, "I don't need you to educate me, I just have bad luck." "Really not, you just don't have enough ability, and then you feel that you are a god, you despise everything, you want to do business in China, and you look down on these old hats in the country. Let's go, there is no place for you to be arrogant." "Talent," Lu Feng said angrily, "do you know why I didn't take you as my opponent? You don't deserve it. You won, everything you said was right, and now you're telling the truth. I don't know what to say to someone like you. If you can't let go of this high-spirited mentality, you will never succeed in your life. I won't tell you more, there are still things at hand." Lu Feng, after he finished speaking, he hung up the phone. Jiao Anfan laughed when he heard the call to hang up on the phone. He didn't want to believe that Lu Feng didn't regard him as an opponent, which was unacceptable to his self-esteem. The mountains and rivers meet, let's wait and see. Jiao Anfan took a deep breath, picked up the ticket on the table, stood up and left. Now the three provinces covered by Viputa have become popular in the TV market. Although the big brother Changhong is useless, Skyworth, TCL, Konka and other companies are really crazy. On the surface, it seems that a high-end technology from Anfan has fallen. In fact, there are already corpses everywhere. Those pirate factories with hundreds of people do not know how many bankruptcies are every day. Jiafeng is now facing a problem, insufficient production capacity. Lu Feng picked up the phone and called the manager of the production department and the person in charge of the business department. After a while, the two walked in. "Mr. Lu, are you looking for me? Can you solve the problem of production capacity?" Lu Feng looked up at the two and asked. "We are trying to figure out a way, but our production standards, other factories can't do it, and the time is tight." The production manager wondered, "We are fighting a price war now, and the sales volume is rising. Once the price recovers, these production capacities will not be needed." "Yes, I heard Mr. Zhu say that now the terminal market has also cut prices with other companies, and the sales are not as crazy as they were a few days ago," said the person in charge of the commerce department. "So you can't think of a solution?" Then I'll think of a solution for you. Lu Feng leaned back on his chair and said, go to Panda to talk, we are in the same line, their sales are going to die, isn't it good to be an OEM? I now, regardless of the cost, what I want is that the three words Wipita are deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. I'm going to talk to Panda, said the person in charge of the business department. Lu Feng is actually very envious of Jiao Unfan's factory. Judging from the data, it is definitely a very high-end and high-quality factory, but he also knows that he can't get it even if he has money, let alone no money. In the afternoon, the banners at the door of the electrical appliance market in major provinces were already stacked with banners. The distributor of Wipita stood at the door, holding a microphone and shouting loudly, today, the manufacturer sent people directly, 27-inch large color TV, only you need 3,199, you heard it right, less than 3,002, buy it now, and send it to your home. We have strong strength and foreign sales are far ahead. Now domestic sales are to take care of the Chinese people. It doesn't matter if you buy or not. You go in and have a look. We are a big brand with guaranteed quality. There are advertisements on CCTV, and we are still exempt from inspection. After the dealer's roar, the manufacturer's sales department roared again. There were a lot of people standing at the door. As long as someone stepped forward, they were immediately pulled into the store. The business of this era is like this. The bottom-level sales are completely based on robbing, and many times even fights are commonplace. The sales staff of Wipita had already raised banners and walked towards the street, shouting as they walked. The generous sales commission made them feel like they were beaten by chicken blood. The walls in the countryside are full of advertisements, and the tricycles in the city are running around the streets with billboards. The competition is so fierce that people today cannot imagine it. In an office, Sun Yuanqing sat with a decadent face. In front of him sat two men in their 40s, smoking a cigarette and looking sad. Tell me, what should I do? This is a major loss of state-owned assets, understand? I have no credit, I have toil, right, that's contract fraud. What about the evidence? You said he was pretending to be an overseas employee, defrauding the contract, and taking out the evidence he was pretending to be the two questioned. Sun Yuanqing's heart is bitter. He can't say it when he is sitting. He has something in his hand, but he can't take it out. Once he takes it out, he can't tell clearly. It is state-owned assets. Assets, this is much more serious than the current problem. I admit it, give me a chance. Go to the fertilizer factory. Chang Hong will hand it over to Li Quanliang. This is the transfer document. Please sign it. A document was placed in front of Sun Yuanqing. Looking at the transfer document, his eyes were empty, and one line of turbid tears flowed down. High-speed text handwriting returns to the 1989 chapter list. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 337. The next day, the news that Sun Yuanqing was transferred to the fertilizer factory spread in the local area in an instant, and there was already an uproar in private. It was basically certain that he had been defrauded of 80 million before. The arrival of Li Quanliang not only brought people, but also brought 19 million funds, and the huge conference room was full. Li Quanliang took a sip from the teacup on the table, coughed twice and said, I already know about this, the situation the factory is facing now. I also understand, I am here to put out the fire, and this meeting is just one, that is to join the competition. At noon, Chang Hong announced another price cut of 150 yuan. The domestic TV sets are like this, not to mention laymen, even foreign brands are dumbfounded. This crazy competition has also led to a decline in the sales of brands such as Samsung, Sony, and Sharp. In 9 days, all brands have basically ended. With terminal marketing, advertising, and price cuts in full swing, other brands are old brands after all, and they have a good reputation in the mouths of ordinary people. When the absolute price advantage was lost, the sharpness of Vipta began to dissipate, from more than 10,000 units sold a day to less than 8,000 units overnight. Some media that fanned the flames and wanted to watch GFN Electronics lively began to get restless again. Zhu Lidong just flew back from Shandong, and Lu Feng in the office looked at the data and asked, "How much did the new CEO of Changhong bring?" "It is said to be 50 million to the outside world, but I think it is impossible." I asked in private, "About 20 million, which makes up for the previous hole," Zhu Lidong said. "Our sales have already started to decline," Zhang Fengxia said worriedly. "You can't buy it even if you lose money." "Don't worry, it will get better." Lu Feng brought over a folder next to him, which contains some information about this Li Quanliang. He has managed many state-owned enterprises, but few of them have achieved results. He is known for being safe. It is estimated that he was temporarily replaced because he wanted to stabilize the situation. 2 more days. The decline in the sales of Viputa is a fatal injury for GFN Electronics. Everyone knows that now GFN Electronics relies on Vapta to save lives. Only when Viputa pushes down Changhong and sits on the throne of number 1 in domestic production can it be possible to make a profit later, or it will be a death. In this situation, many people feel that Lu Feng is over. The first to die is Onfan, and the second to die is GFN Electronics. The two geniuses have fallen one after another, and many waste-rich second generation secretly applaud. In the past 3 days, the sales volume of Vipta has been declining. Part of the reason is that the supply is insufficient. Some places are out of stock and cannot be mobilized in time. Another reason is related to the efforts of other brands. All the way from more than 10,000 units to more than 4,000 units, many media call it a cliff-like decline. All major companies began to celebrate a temporary victory. As for the news that GFN Electronics disclosed to seek cooperation with Panda to increase production, it has become a joke. At the Changhong internal meeting, Li Quanliang looked at the short-term report card in front of him with a smile on his face, and said to everyone, "Look, this is GFN Electronics that you can't handle. What's the problem? It's just a paper tiger. A mere child will turn your industry upside down." The people present did not speak, because the results were indeed there. Many people present knew that this matter was not over at all. Li Quanliang just came up, and the funds he brought gave Changhong a booster, relying on the previous erection. Under the brand effect. "Let's talk about it today. Give me the phone number of Chairman GFN." Li Quanliang stood up, his face full of pride, and said, "I'll talk to this little guy and teach him what business is." Li Quanliang returned to the office and called Lu Feng. "Which one?" Lu Feng answered the phone and asked. "Is that the chairman of GFN Electronics?" There was contempt in the voice on the other end of the phone. "I am. Who are you?" "I'm Li Quanliang." "In the past 3 days, your name should be familiar to you, right?" the person on the other end of the phone murmured. Lu Feng was also a little confused when he heard this tone. If I remember correctly, this Li is always in his 50s, and he has been in a state-owned enterprise for many years. How can he speak like a child who has been praised in kindergarten? He pondered for a moment. This President Li has worked all his life in some marginal state-owned enterprises, and this time he was transferred to Changhong. Although it was a flat tone, everyone knew how important Changhong was. In addition, it suppressed Lu Feng's limelight as soon as he came up. This excellent result made this man in his 50s feel light for the first time. He felt that he was so capable, but he was suppressed for nearly 30 years. It's more than thunderous. I adore it so much." Lu Feng took advantage of the situation and patted his ass. When Li Quanliang on the other end of the phone heard this, he was even more ecstatic. He had heard too much touted Sun Yuanqing over the years. Even if he went to a meeting, a big business owner like others would not even look at himself. However, now the people he can't handle are now admiring himself extremely, that feeling, from the comfort of the hair to the caps of the toenails. Little Lou, I've always heard that you're crazy, why aren't you crazy today? Don't dare, I was so arrogant before, it was entirely because there were no capable people in this industry. I tell you this, just like you, if I give you 100 million, you can't be my opponent. Yes, I've run out of options now, and the sales volume is falling. You can think of a way, Lu Feng asked. I think you're okay, but there's really nowhere to go. You can come to me and remember this call. The other party bragged a few words and hung up the phone. Lu Feng looked at the phone and sneered twice, thinking that this person was a little interesting. Li Quanliang sat on the boss's chair with Erlang's legs crossed, with an unstoppable smile on his face. After waiting for decades, he finally waited for this day. Chang Hong is the leader in the domestic TV industry, and he is the absolute leader. He wanted to experience what it was like to be the leader. After thinking about it, he wrote down the flattery that Lu Feng gave him just now. He picked up the phone and called an assistant. Mr. Li, what are your orders? Look at this thing and publish it in the newspaper for me, and then the factory will also publicize it, you know. The assistant is a clever person. He glanced at the above dialogue and immediately understood. He hurriedly smiled and said, Mr. Li is worthy of being Boss Li, and Sun Yuanqing is a person who can't be sure. As soon as you make a move, you immediately obey. It's just a piece of cake. The next day, this dialogue was polished and instantly turned into a dialogue in which the chairman of GFN Electronics bowed like Li Quanliang begging for mercy. At noon, this report was reprinted by major newspapers. For a while, people outside the industry, not to mention the industry, were shocked. Many people are muttering in private, how could such a powerful person be buried before? All kinds of touted phone calls came as promised, and many people were already convinced that GFN Electronics was completely useless, and Lu Feng was also out of his depth. For a week in a row, the sales volume of Vipta still couldn't pick up, and it maintained at more than 4,000 units per day. At first, the management didn't murmur anything, but as the report spread more and more widely, the management people also began to question whether Lu Feng was really out of luck. Zhang Fengxia knocked on the door, walked in and sat opposite, staring at Lu Feng with all her popularity. Living ancestor, what's wrong? Lu Feng asked without raising his head. You don't care, right? Zhang Fengxia said, those newspapers outside are endless, and the business department can't handle them, and the sales volume is also stagnant. What are you humiliated outside? You know what? Say. Call me a pug. You know, then you should move a little bit, or are you saying that you have nothing to do? Zhang Fengxia stared at him with disappointment in her eyes for the first time. In her eyes, this man has always been omnipotent. This time, he seems to have really encountered a desperate situation. Is so powerless. Lu Feng raised his head and looked at her with a smile, and said, how do you know that I didn't do anything? Zhang Fengxia's eyes shone with light, and she hurriedly asked, what's the trick? Lu Feng took out the key, opened the drawer, took out a plan, put it on the table, and said, I've researched the pain points in the market these days, you can call Mr. Zhu over. Zhang Fengxia picked up the phone and called Zhu Lidong's office, come to the meeting soon. A few minutes later, Zhu Lidong walked in, looking down, he could see that he had nothing to do with the market these days. Sitting down and looking at Lu Feng, he said, Mr. Lu, what's going on? The conference to change the market, I recently walked a few points and asked many consumers. The main problem is the issue of brand power. Many people want to buy it, but they dare not buy it. They are frightened by those assembled products. Lu Feng put the plan in front of the two and said, "So, I researched this." Looking at the words on the cover, the two muttered in unison, "3 guarantees." Yes, return, exchange, repair, 3-day return, 7-day exchange, and 1-year repair, so that those customers who dare not buy can get rid of their worries. Zhu Lidong flipped through it and said, "Mr. Lu, if you do this, there will be many malicious returns, and the cost of after-sales will also increase. And there will be disputes, there will be a lot of things," Zhang Fengxia also said. Lu Feng raised his hand to stop the two of them, and said solemnly, "This matter is settled. 3 guarantees is definitely a pain point in the current market. The quality of products is uneven, and consumers are being scammed too much. Now, when you go to buy a piece of clothing, you must haggle the price, and you need to see how much it is worth at a glance, or you will be pitted by blood. These days, the outside world has humiliated him. From today, he will slap him back with a slap." As for that Li Quanliang, Lu Feng didn't take it seriously at all. Such control over Changhong can only be said to be God's will. Don't blame him for his ruthless attack. High-speed text handwriting returns to the 1989 chapter list. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 338. Several meetings were held in the afternoon, and Lu Feng had decided to implement the 3 guarantees. As long as the worries of consumers were resolved, Viputa could shine. Immediately after the layout in the terminal market, Viputa has assembly plants of different sizes in various cities, which will also be faster and more advantageous than other manufacturers. In the evening, the people from the business office rushed out a few articles. Lu Feng took a look and made sure that there was no problem, and asked them to publish them in several local newspapers. The next day, Jiafeng Electronics put a heavy fried egg in the market. The product has 3 packs. The laws of the country have always required it, but no one has done it. In front of the major counters of Viputa, the banner of the 3 guarantee policy was pulled up. This time it was even more confident. With the opening of the electrical city, the sales staff of Viputa rushed out to attract people. This time, they did not talk about product quality, but directly talked about the 3 guarantee policy. "Auntie, you said other brands, can I give you this guarantee? We are all regular, and you don't want to buy it for 3 days. As long as there is no artificial damage, you can take it back. We are a big brand. If you want to change to another model in 7 days, you can. If there is a problem within 1 year, we will return it to the factory for repair. What brand is not the brand? The quality of the big brand is so guaranteed. Come with me." Early in the morning, this kind of dialogue was constantly being staged in the 3 major provinces. TV sets are not cheap, and everyone was worried about what to do if they bought them back and broke. In the morning, according to the preliminary data gathered by the terminal market, Viputa has sold more than 5,000 units, and the sales volume has risen again, and 3 packages have been carried out for all the previously sold products. Other companies in the industry were dumbfounded when they saw the rushing data. The most embarrassing was Li Quanliang. He sat at his desk and asked in disbelief, "What did you say?" Jiafeng Electronics just announced their sales data this morning, selling more than 5,000 units, and claiming that the products are sold out again, and they will speed up the industrial layout recently. "Isn't it just a 3-pack, Li Quanliang said in disbelief. "Impossible, absolutely impossible, this is fake data. Mr. Li, according to the sales feedback from the market terminal, it should be true. Viputa sales in the morning were very good, and several sales points were sold out. Viputa has already been destroyed by me." That day, the chairman of Viputa kept begging for mercy on the phone. "It's only a matter of time before its collapse." Li Quanliang rubbed his face with his hands. He has been so snarky these days, telling people how powerful he is everywhere, and he hopes that he is a powerful industry boss. However, Lu Feng only made a 3-pack, and slapped him back to his original shape. Now all enterprises are facing a problem, whether to follow up the strategy of 3 guarantees or not to follow up. Once following up, it means investing a lot of money in after sales, which is very uncomfortable for many companies. Immediately afterwards, some important local newspapers published the 3 guarantee policy affirming GFN Electronics at noon, indicating that GFN Electronics is at the forefront of the industry in terms of serving consumers. Production has peaked, and the commercial department went to Panda several times, but the conversation was not very suitable. It is beyond their pride to be reduced to OEM for GFN Electronics. Mr. Liu, people say it's not about money, the technology is authorized to us, the original general manager has been transferred, and the current general manager is a person who wants to save face. Lu Feng laughed when he heard this, closed the folder in front of him and said, "Let's talk." That night. You set a place. After explaining to the person in charge of the business department, Lu Feng went to the finance department to hold a meeting. In the past few days, the company's daily turnover has reached 30 to 40 million yuan, and this month's turnover can exceed 100 million yuan. According to the current preliminary estimates, the promotional activities will be completed by the end of the month, and the estimated net loss is about 15 million. With the 3 guarantees of the product, 20 million cannot be stopped. In the evening, in the private room of the Supreme Hotel, Lu Feng sat there and looked at the menu. Zhang Fengxia and Zhu Lidong were both there, as well as the person in charge of the business department. A few minutes later, the person in charge of the business department knocked on the door and walked in and said, "Mr. Liu, President Ho is here." Lu Feng stood up and saw a bald man in his 50s walking in. He was wearing glasses, a white shirt and suit pants. The waistband of his trousers was too high, and a leather bag was pinned to the waistband of his trousers. There is a pager inside. This dress is definitely the dress of a successful person, especially at his age. It has absolute lethal power for women of the same age. "Mr. Ho, hello," Lu Feng stretched out his hand. The other party reached out and shook hands, snorted from his throat, and seemed to be a little arrogant, but Lu Feng didn't care. "Sit down." Everyone politely said a few words before taking their seats. President Ho sat on the main seat, and Lu Feng sat next to him and said, "Mr. Ho, I think you understand why I have this meal with you today." "Impossible, I feel very dissatisfied with the patents granted to you before." "Of course, that is what my predecessor did. For an old factory like Panda, I hope it will be glorious in my hands, not a replacement." "Factory," Mr. Ho said decisively. "I know pandas are brilliant, we just need a transition period. Haven't they been sold out recently?" "Impossible, this is the dignity of a panda." Mr. Ho's face changed greatly, he stared at Lu Feng and said, "You won't understand." Lu Feng looked at him and whispered in his ear, "I'll give a kickback." "You're a good-natured young man." "I just like to promote juniors," Mr. Ho said with a smile, and Zhu Lidong and Zhang Fengxia were caught off guard by the speed of his face change. "My junior, I really need your help." Lu Feng picked up the glass and touched it. "Then why bother you?" "It doesn't matter, this." Mr. Ho asked in a low voice, "How about a kickback? Piece count, you give 1 piece to the OEM, we will pay a certain fee, this money, understand?" Lu Feng raised his eyebrows and said, "Don't worry, whether it's in the account or the way of transfer, no one will know." "That's good, I didn't expect you to be very enlightened at a young age." Mr. Ho picked up the glass and touched it, and said, "It's a pleasure to cooperate." "Happy cooperation." After the two of them drank, Mr. Ho's stern face was put down, and the atmosphere at the dinner table began to warm up. After drinking, Mr. Ho also said a lot about pandas. The glory of pandas has passed, and it is very difficult to maintain profitability in this situation. The current situation is like the 7 heroes fighting for hegemony, and GFN Electronics has the feeling of the rise of the Qin dynasty. As night fell, the electricity was closed, and the sales data of Wiputa was released. In the case of shortage of stock, 16,432 units were sold in one day. This sales data broke the previous one maintained by Changhong. 14,000 units. As the data came out, the entire industry was shaken, and everyone understood that selling so much was all because of losing money, but in the current situation, it is also a skill to sell at a loss. The market is a zero-sum game. Wiputa sells more, and other brands naturally decline. Changhong has dropped by 19%, and other brands are cut off. This is no longer a competition of relative strength, but a one-sided massacre. The lights are on in the offices of the CEOs of more than a dozen companies, and everyone's faces are full of sad faces. Li Quanliang held a few meetings in the afternoon and wanted to study how to deal with it. It turned out that his subordinates did not tell him the truth at all. He had just arrived a few days ago, and these people were all Sun Yuanking's old subordinates. Everyone was waiting for President Sun to come back. How could they possibly do anything to him? Li Quanliang also wanted to launch the 3 guarantees. The problem is that once it is launched, there must be a lot of funds to support it, especially for repairs. Changhong does not have so many assembly plants. After thinking about it, he can't do anything about it. If Wiputa is squeezed from the throne of number 1 in China, his position will also be squeezed by others. Li Quanliang had only one way, to call Sun Yuanqing. I'll find your factory manager. After a while, Sun Yuanking's voice came from the other end of the phone, but he seemed listless and lost his former self-confidence and eloquence. Who? Mr. Sun, it's me, Li Quanliang. Sun Yuanqing on the other end of the phone was not at all surprised that Li Quanliang called. He has been following the news of the TV industry and kept in touch with President Li. He knows that Changhong's cash flow is relatively tight, and it is impossible to establish a 3 guarantee service. Up to now, Changhong has no chance of winning in the market. Mr. Sun, I have no choice at all. Today, the sales volume of Wiputa is soaring. Sun Yuanqing looked down on Li Quanliang et al. Such a person would stay in an ordinary state-owned enterprise all his life and go to get off work on time. After more than 30 years of mixing, I finally picked up my own cheap. Let me make a phone call for you. Sun Yuanqing hung up the phone and called President Li. Mr. Li's mood these days is like a roller coaster. One second he was happy, GFN Electronics seemed to want to play, and the next second he felt like he was going to finish it. In the past 2 days, he has a quick-acting heart-saving pill on his body at all times. Mr. Sun, what's the matter? Li Quanliang's straw bag is gone. I'm already like this, and I still want to keep you. After 3 months, I can collect the 80 million yuan, which is enough to crush GFN Electronics. Do you have anything to do with the ore? Give it to Tianying. Put some eye drops on the copper industry. Let's do it like this. I'm waiting for the police to come to the door every day. These days are really tormenting. Mr. Li sighed and said, the times have really changed. Sun Yuanqing on the other end of the phone didn't speak, and he felt a sense of sadness like a hero's twilight. The next day, the person in charge of Tianying Copper called Lu Feng. The price of ore has risen. For Tianying Copper, it has doubled, and the cost has doubled directly. Hearing this news, Lu Feng didn't have much expression on his face. He just said something like I know. It seems that he has already seen through all this. At this point, they have tried their best. Lu Feng stood up, lit a cigarette, looked at the busy factory in the distance, and whispered in his heart. After a few months, this big drama is finally coming to an end. High-speed text handwriting returns to the 1989 chapter list. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 339. The news quickly spread out. It is impossible for people to know this kind of highly targeted operation. When many people heard the news, they felt that something big was going to happen. After GFN Electronics acquired Tianying Copper, the raw materials of alloy copper were no longer stored, but were delivered in stock every day to avoid the backlog of goods and the occupation of cash. Today's price has doubled directly, and he still has to use it. This move puts a lot of pressure on Lu Feng. Although he has 80 million in his hand, if he really uses all the money, he is asking for a dead end. In the morning, Panda released news and reached an agreement with GFN Electronics. In order to take care of private enterprises and promote market-oriented in-depth reforms, it will be reduced to the production of WIPATA products for GFN Electronics for a period of not less than 3 months. He also said that the Panda factory is still a first-class factory in China, and the product quality will only be more reliable than that of GFN Electronics factory. Finally, he said that GFN Electronics sent the most professional team to inspect the factory, and the result was shocked by such a first-class factory. Of speechless. The whole article is expressing a point of view, that is, the pandas of the year are still young. Huan Yowei flipped through today's newspaper, and when there was a knock on the door, Secretary Kui walked in and said, Hokan Copper has attacked Tianying Copper, and now there is a lot of uproar in the industry, and large copper companies are basically they all entered the Copper Industry Association or the local Chamber of Commerce, and some small businesses were scared enough by this move. More than being frightened enough, it is simply trembling. Hokan Copper is basically a godlike presence in the industry. The companies in the United Copper Association not only hold the seller's market, but also hold the buyer's market. As long as Mr. Li said a word, a small and medium-sized copper industry can be wiped out. Apart from surrendering, these enterprises have no other choice. Huan Yowei listened to Secretary Kui briefly talk about the situation in the market, and at the same time called several deputy mayors over to ask. It's time, Huan Yowei said in a low voice. Secretary Kui nodded, suddenly thought of something, and said in a low voice, if a Hokan copper industry is destroyed, Lu Feng will start to aggressively enter the copper industry. Pricing power, will something go wrong? When Huan Yowei heard this, a fierce light flashed in his eyes, but he disappeared in the next second, and he pondered, he is a smart man. Lu Feng is indeed smart. He understands very well what Huan Yowei wants. Just relying on GFN Electronics will not drive the local economy and employment. After 2 hours, the local Public Security Bureau received an order to carry out the arrest task. At 10:30 in the morning, 3 police cars parked under the office building of Hokan Copper. In the chairman's office, several police officers held the arrest papers and said, you are suspected of driving up prices, disrupting the market, and monopolizing. Come with us. Mr. Li sat there and sighed, smiled instead of angry, raised his head and said, after smoking the cigarette, okay. You smoke. Mr. Li smoked a cigarette and said, I was a worker in a mine in the 1970s. At that time, my dream was to eat a steamed bun with white noodles. I still remember that my wife just gave birth to my son, and I took the white noodles that I exchanged with others. For food stamps, I went to the supply and marketing agency to buy 2 caddies of white noodles, but I have never made white noodles, and the steaming is not good, but my wife still eats deliciously. She ate all 2 caddies of white noodles in one go. At that time, I was thinking that I must let her eat steamed bread with white flour every day. For this dream, in 1979, I quit this very good job in the eyes of others. When I returned to the copper industry, life was like a dream, and looking back, I don't even know how I got into such a big family business. I divorced my wife because I had some money, and I was hanging out with a girl in the dance hall. Maybe I am really sober at this moment. The life of these decades has been very beautiful in the eyes of others, but I feel that I have been floating all these years, and this moment is extraordinarily practical. He sat there and muttered, The aura of a boss on his body disappeared cleanly, as if he had returned to his identity as a miner again, speaking in a low voice. After a cigarette was burned, Mr. Lee stood up and stretched out his hand. The handcuffs were pulled up, and one of the policemen took a shirt and put it on his hand, and the two of them grabbed his arm and walked out. The news of the arrest of the boss of Hoken Copper has once again shocked everyone. It has only been a long time since Tianying Copper was raised in the morning. Panda and GFN Electronics reached an OEM agreement, and then President Lee caught. In just one morning, the intensity of the confrontation was dizzying, and everyone had a feeling that things were going to change. People in the Copper Industry Association have felt that something is wrong. Many companies announced their withdrawal from the Copper Industry Association for the first time, and the price alliance was instantly fragmented. The price negotiated with many companies before was smashed in an instant, and the chaotic moment for the copper industry has come. Such a drastic change in Hoken Copper will definitely be affected in the short term, and such a behemoth will free up a huge market share. After losing the threat, medium-sized enterprises began to become eager to try and seize more markets. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, there was a company called Sanyuan Copper Industry. The quotation for high-strength alloy copper was the lowest at 8,000 per ton. 943 yuan. Compared with the previous price, it was directly cut in half, which surprised the entire industry and shocked the outside world. How profitable the copper industry was before. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Mr. Lee was officially arrested. He was very clear about what he had done. He would not be sentenced for a few years, but 5 years. Zhang Fengxia pushed open the office door, walked in excitedly, and said excitedly, "President Lee of Hoken Copper Industry has been arrested, all the members of the Copper Industry Association have withdrawn, and many companies have also withdrawn from the local Chamber of Commerce. It seems that there is another company. Club." "Got it," Lu Feng said calmly. "Copper raw materials are diving. After losing control, those small and medium-sized enterprises made crazy quotations. Just now, the general manager of Tianying Copper called me and said that under such fierce competition, there must be copper companies going bankrupt. Do we want to? How many? He has already contacted a few." "Don't." Lu Feng raised his head sharply and stared at Zhang Fengxia, as if electrocuted. "This is a good opportunity to enter the market, not to mention that we still have Tianying Copper Industry and supporting enterprises. How good is it to form an industrial chain? No, this money is not profitable, tell him, feel at ease to be his, Tianying Copper is completely enough now. After breaking the price monopoly, we will produce some of our own, and then purchase some from the market." Lu Feng looked at her and said. "Understand? It's free money now. In the next month or two, coppers will definitely compete with each other like TVs are now. Once it stabilizes, it will be a steady stream of money." Zhang Fengxia looked at him and felt a little weird. How did Lu Feng, whose money is like life, start to change? "I have some money, but I can't earn it." "You've been reading the local official newspaper more recently, and you can read it word by word, do you know?" Lu Feng stood up and said, "The price of copper has plummeted, and our profits will come, and the chain reaction will follow. Hard plastics, plugs, wires, and even displays, all will be reduced in price." Zhang Fengxia couldn't understand, but Lu Feng said no, there must be his reasons. Throughout the day, the industry was boiling, and many CEOs of copper companies were trembling with fear. However, only one Mr. Lee was arrested, and it was impossible for Huang Youwei to arrest all those people. With the price reduction of high-strength alloy copper, the price advantage of those companies disappeared in an instant, but GFN Electronics became the biggest beneficiary. At 6 o'clock in the evening, the lowest price of alloy copper was 8,000 yuan per ton, and then the prices of copper wire, copper paper, fuse, insurance tube, and other products plummeted. The chain reaction was so great that people were speechless. In fact, Huan Yawei was also very worried about Lu Feng. He was afraid that he would be blinded by money and rushed into the copper industry to make a profit. If Lu Feng dared to pick his head at this time, he would dare to do something to Lu Feng. He didn't see GFN Electronics make a move until after the meeting in the evening. Today's GFN Electronics is extraordinarily well behaved, and there is no movement at all. A smart guy after all. The next day, the local official newspaper published a headline titled, "Deepen Market Reform, Promote Healthy Competition Among Private Enterprises, Continue to Attract High-Quality Enterprises, and Strengthen Several Issues and Guidance on Investment Promotion." This report is very long, and the content in it is relatively obscure. Lu Feng was eating breakfast and slowly watched it, while Zhang Fengxia next to him also read it. Isn't this just a meeting? Zhang Fengxia wondered. A meeting? Not open in the morning, not in the evening. It is open at this time, and it is also about the private market. It is said in the second paragraph that it will provide a good business environment for private enterprises, help enterprises improve various supporting facilities, and form a local industrial chain to realize internal circulation. This kind of thing is not said in every meeting. It has become a specimen. The price of copper has come down. Let the finance calculate today to see if there is any profit in our current price. Last night, it seems that the price of the display screen has also dropped. Let the commercial department connect as soon as possible. Lu Feng put down the newspaper and said. The morning meeting will tell you. Lu Feng knew that whether he could fill the hole in the next 3 months would depend on the market. If the 80 million yuan could not be repaid on time, GFN Electronics would be in a storm. He made a rough calculation, and at most it looked like he would burn 15 million, and this amount of money was no problem. At the morning meeting, finance calculated the prices of various raw materials in the current market. After the calculation, a smile appeared on his face. He raised his head to look at Lu Feng and said, "Mr. Lu, at the current price, we actually made a profit." "How much?" A smile appeared on Lu Feng's face. "The profit per unit is 314 cents. Everyone present was shocked. This is still a price reduction of 200 yuan. It is conceivable how much profit each TV company made in the past. No wonder they are not fat. I'm finally going to see the money back." Zhang Fengxia's eyes turned red with excitement. High-speed text handwriting returns to the 1989 chapter list. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 340. The people present were a little emotional when they heard this, especially some old employees. Watching the growth of GFN Electronics a little bit, the financial manager was particularly emotional. He knows the financial situation of GFN Electronics best. Since its establishment, money has flowed out like the Yellow River bursting its banks. For a period of time, he was so stressed that he could not sleep. As copper enterprises began to enter vicious competition, the market price fluctuated greatly, and large enterprises began to use prices to squeeze the living space of small enterprises. 3 days later, GFN Electronics announced that it had signed contracts with 9 medium-sized copper companies and signed contracts at a price 5% higher than the market. And the person in charge of the Commerce Department said in an interview with reporters that he hoped that the copper market would be stable, and vicious price competition would only make the market more chaotic. The boss of the copper industry scolded his mother when he heard this. GFN Electronics has made a big killing in the TV industry, and all kinds of subsidized money are thrown into the market. A wave of orders from GFN Electronics has reduced the competition in the copper market, but the fierce competition continues. In the 3 provinces of the layout, the sales volume of Viputa has surpassed that of Changhong, becoming the absolute number 1. The OEM of Panda has also started production, and everything is accelerating. The market over there in Sichuan will definitely be impossible to enter for a while, and the lawsuit will not end in a year or a half. The marketing department has decided to suspend the market over there. In the conference room, Lu Feng flipped through the report in his hand. The consumption potential of the major provinces was basically the same, and the transportation cost in some provinces was too high, such as Yunnan and Guizhou. Freight logistics, terminal sales points, assembly plants, and after-sales services are all established. Which province will be able to get through before the end of the year? Lu Feng asked Zhu Lidong. Zhu Lidong pondered for a while and said, the best place to get through now is the coastal area. We are very familiar with the port in Ningbo. In the inland, Henan, my idea is to attack cities such as Guangzhou and Shenzhen first. Lu Feng nodded and said, yes, there is a lot of consumption potential there, and there are many factories. There is just one problem, the market competition there is also fierce, and it is a gathering place for foreign brands. Once we pass, it will be a complete set. From marketing, publicity, assembling factories, including finding dealers for cooperation, these are all money. Zhu Lidong took a folder from the vice president next to him and said, the average cost of opening a province is 10 million. Everyone present was silent, and in the end it was all about money. Lu Feng sighed and flipped through the reports in front of him. It seemed that he couldn't act rashly in the past month or two. Since yesterday, GFN Electronics has entered a stable profit period. The daily profit is between 300,000 and 500,000. The financial side estimates that according to the peak and underestimation period of the market, the profit in the second half of this year will be around 60 million. The total debt of GFN Electronics is 260 million, which is not counting the 80 million that Lu Feng cheated. If you count it, it is already on the verge of bankruptcy. The competition in the past few months has put GFN Electronics on the verge of bankruptcy. Lu Feng will really be unable to resist it as long as he keeps fighting for another month. The meeting studied for 3 hours, and finally Lu Feng could only decide to suspend the market promotion, focus on building these 3 provinces, and expand the market in other provinces after August. Yesterday was still the smoke of gunpowder. In just a few days, it seemed as if nothing had happened, and the terminal market was still fierce, but everyone understood one thing, Wipter really stood up. Many companies have begun to study GFN Electronics, from a series of systems such as products, internal management, marketing, and employee incentives, not so much to the study of GFN Electronics, as it is to study Lu Feng. This is a man who has repeatedly created miracles. If we say that the previous GMA was lucky, then GFN Electronics can't say that. It was already the end of June, and the heat of midsummer was scorching the earth. The air conditioner in Lu Feng's office was on, and it was a little cool. The phone on the desk rang. Which one? Mr. Lu, I'm Secretary Kui. I'm coming to the city tomorrow for a meeting, the mid-year private enterprise conference. You have performed very well this year. Let me reveal in advance that the name of the local leading enterprise may fall in your home. Really? Then thank Secretary Kui. There have been good things going on recently, Lu Feng said happily. Mr. Lu is so happy, I just said it together. Double happiness is coming. On the 1st of next month, the leaders of the province will come to inspect, arrange your factory, and make preparations. Hearing this, Lu Feng was stunned for a moment, then responded, no problem. After being polite, he hung up the phone. Lu Feng stood up and walked out of the office. He pushed open the door of Zhang Fengxia's office, and said, be stricter in terms of production these 2 days. Huan Yuwei is coming. Zhang Fengxia raised her head and said in surprise, he can come if he wants. If he comes, do I still have to give orders? It's from the province. Everything is back on track, and Lu Feng's work pressure has also eased a lot judging from the current profit situation. there is no problem in paying back the 80 million whole. As for bank loans, we will talk about it next year. As long as there is a market, nothing else is a problem. For the past 6 months, Lu Feng has been really tired, and he is almost always spinning. He is also thinking about giving himself a vacation. The next day, the Private Entrepreneurs Conference was grandly held. There were a total of 120 people in the audience, and they basically called all the businessmen of the city. Before the opening, everyone was searching for Lu Feng in the crowd. Although many people didn't know what Lu Feng looked like, everyone knew one criterion, that is, he was very young. The average age of the people present is basically around 40 years old, and a young man in his 20s must be particularly eye-catching. The conference was held at 10 o'clock, and Lu Feng left the company at 9 o'clock. As a result, his car had a flat tire halfway through. He couldn't go to the village or the store, and there wasn't even a phone booth around. There was really no choice but to change the spare tire by himself. Lu Feng took out the tools from the trunk to prepare to change the tire, only to find that there were a lot of nails scattered on the ground. The tire was punctured by a nail. Instantly, Lu Feng became alert and looked around. He didn't see any repair shops around, and there were no trees on both sides of the road, so he couldn't hide people. Lu Feng looked around and thought it might be a prank by a child or something. At the entrance of the conference, 3 young people in their 20s were dressed very solemnly, their hair was meticulously combed, and hairspray was applied. Can this work? Will I need an invitation letter when I go in? If I'm blocked at the door, I'm done, a round-faced man said nervously. Can't I think of this? The man with the face of the melon took out an invitation letter, opened it and glanced at it. It said, Lu Feng, Chairman of Jiafeng Electronic Technology Co., Ltd. I have studied all his methods. This person definitely has 2 tricks. Let's use his method to tease him. Even if he changes the tires by himself, it will take more than half an hour, and if he comes over, he will get 1 hour. The 2 nodded. Think about it, this hour, how many people flatter me and want to do business with me. I just need to tell them that I opened a small factory to produce auto parts, and hint them that they want to do business with me, just buy our accessories. What do you think those people will do? Pretty, Mr. Yan, you will definitely be a big winner in the business world in the future. Your brain is really invincible. I also found out that the boss of Jiafeng Electronics has done this before. If he can use this trick to others, we will use this trick to deal with him. Come on, come in quickly. Wait a minute, you 2 are my secretaries, pay attention to your identity and stand behind me. The 2 stood behind a young man surnamed Yan, and then President Yan raised his chest with arrogance and disdain on his face, put his hands on his back, and walked over with 8-character steps. He felt that Lu Feng must be very aura when he was so young and became such a big boss. Sir, please show me the invitation letter, the reception girl said sweetly. Mr. Yan frowned, coughed, pouted at the person behind him, and said, I don't have any eyesight. Yes, Mr. Lu, I'm sorry. The people behind them were terrified, and hurriedly took out the invitation letter and handed it over. The little girl at the reception glanced at it, and it said Jiafeng Electronics, but she was also stunned for a moment. Today, she heard the most about this boss. When many bosses came, they were asking about this. She originally thought it was a handsome rising star, but she didn't expect the person in front of her to be pretentious, but at a young age, her eyes were above the top. I was very disappointed, but still showed a smile. Mr. Lu, please come in. Humph, you don't know me, dare to stop me, blind eyes, tell you, that is, I'm in a good mood today, otherwise, if I get angry, you are all finished. Mr. Yan walked away with 8-character steps as he spoke. Go in. The little girls at the reception were dumbfounded. This person is too. I cursed in my heart, and I secretly said that the poor are really rich, arrogant, and domineering. President Yan stepped into the venue. Some people were already seated, some people gathered in groups of 3 or 5 to exchange business cards, and some old friends chatted together. Mr. Yan walked up to a group of people and coughed, cough, cough, cough. More than a dozen people looked at him, looked up and down, and were suspicious. Who is this? Seeing that no one was flattering him, Mr. Yan winked at the people around him. The brother next to him immediately understood, took a step forward, and shouted sharply, "Didn't you see Mr. Lu coming? What are you doing there?" "What? Mr. Lu?" A round-faced man on the far side was the first to react, and hurriedly laughed and said, "You are the chairman of GFN Electronics, right? I've been looking forward to it for a long time. I didn't expect you to be so young. When the man spoke, he reached out his hand and stepped forward to shake hands. The people around Mr. Yan hurriedly blocked them and scolded, "President Lu's hand is something you can hold, so stand there honestly." The faces of the people present were sluggish. This young President Lu is not too pretentious. High-speed text handwriting returns to the 1989 chapter list. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 341. The boss who was reprimanded was also stunned for a moment, then his face was gloomy and uncertain, and the whole person was extremely embarrassed, but because he wanted to have a relationship with others, he still endured it. "I've always heard that President Lu is young, but I didn't expect such a talented person. He really is a young talent. Judging from his temperament, he is absolutely extraordinary. Yes, yes, standing among peers is definitely a standout. Mr. Lu, hello, I'm the chairman of Weian Electronics, this is me." Although the first impression of this President Lu on these people was very bad, he looked like a nouveau riche, as if he had come out of the urban-rural border, but it would not affect these people's flattery at all. Everyone is out to do business. In fact, this kind of frivolous person is easier to deal with. The people present are all business veterans. Isn't it easy to flatter? After a while, this place was surrounded by 3 floors and 3 floors. Many of them had seen Lu Feng, but they were crowded outside, on tiptoes, and could only see the back of their head. "Be quiet, what's the noise? Move back." The 2 people around Mr. Yan are extremely powerful. In their eyes, these bosses are like children in front of the teacher. They can reprimand as much as they want. Let President Lu say a few words to everyone, and applaud. There was applause at the scene, but more people looked ugly and scolded, didn't they just have too stinky money, and they would not do business if they left GFN Electronics? Mr. Yan cleared his throat and said, "Everyone knows about GFN Electronics. To be honest, in the TV field, we have no rivals. There were many rumors before that we were going to close down. Fake, you know. Also, that, I'm very good. In fact, you can see that I've only been out for a few years, and I've beaten the invincible players in the country. I used to make food. Damn, as soon as I make a move, I will directly swept away. Our company will definitely be very rich in the future, just the kind of a rich. That is to say, if you follow me, I will have a bite of meat, and the soup will kill you." When the people present heard this level of speech, their cheeks twitched. This is too watery, and they stammered. The outside world boasted about Lu Feng very much. Is this the level? Could it be that GFN Electronics is all supported by Zhang Fengxia? Mr. Yan's words have nothing to do with it. He kept saying how powerful GFN Electronics was, and boasting how powerful he was, and the people next to him had to cooperate with applause. "I tell you, don't mess with me, be careful with me. With my current strength, I can make a phone call, and within a day, a company can go bankrupt. Of course, I can naturally make a phone call to your company. Become the best in the country. People crowded outside can't listen anymore, a phone call shuts down a company. You don't dare to brag if your brain squeezes the door, it's not as good as a small factory owner. Mr. Yan started a small factory. He imagined that Lu Feng, as the boss of that big company, was still so young, so he must be very arrogant. Just as a farmer imagines the emperor, he must have used a golden hoe. It was less than half an hour before the conference started, and less than half of the people who were seated were all around Lu Feng. Secretary Kui came in to check the preparations, and saw a large group of people gathered together. What's going on over there? Mr. Lu of GFN Electronics is giving these bosses a lesson. Teaching. Secretary Kui was stunned for a moment, then muttered to himself, this doesn't look like Lu Feng's style. I didn't care too much, I just ordered everyone to be seated when it started. Lu Feng stood in the middle of the crowd and was particularly arrogant, the kind that reprimanded all the prominent local people, those bigwigs who had to nod and bow when they saw them on weekdays. He felt as if he was in control of life and death, and everyone had to smile at him. He felt that his whole body was floating, and the feeling of pointing the country made him feel refreshed from his toes to his hair. The two brothers next to him quietly watched the time, a little anxious. For so long, he didn't mention his factory, and Lu Feng was coming soon. Quietly poked Mr. Yan's waist. Why are you stabbing me? Presumptuous. Retire me, Mr. Yan scolded sharply, he was too deeply involved in the play at this moment. The two of them were scolded for a while, and they were both dumbfounded. They reacted and whispered in his ear, quickly tell us about our auto parts factory. In the lounge at the back, Huang Yawei sat with several leaders of the city and chatted about the recent development of private enterprises. Secretary Kui walked in. How is it? Is the arrangement in place? Huang Yawei asked casually, is Lu Feng here? It's already here, let's teach those bosses. Teaching, lecture, Huang Yawei frowned slightly dissatisfied. Right. I'll go out and have a look. Huang Yawei stood up, his whole person looked a little dignified. If Lu Feng dared to engage in this kind of alliance, Huang Yawei would definitely screw his head off. It took Lu Feng a long time to change the tires. He got into the car cursingly, bypassed the road full of nails, and headed straight for the venue. When I got there, I took out the invitation and handed it over. The reception girl glanced at it and was stunned. Lu Feng wanted to take a look at it, and went in directly according to the procedure. Unexpectedly, the girl looked at the invitation card and then looked at Lu Feng. What's wrong? Lu Feng wondered. You are the chairman of GFN Electronics, Lu Feng. Yeah, what's wrong? But there is already a chairman of GFN Electronics, also called Lu Feng. The reception girl stared at Lu Feng, as if trying to tell the truth from the fake. Lu Feng was also confused when he heard this. Did someone deceive him? What's it like? Lu Feng asked. 3 people, very arrogant, your invitation letter is really fake. I'll go in and have a look. Lu Feng stretched out his hand and took the invitation letter, strode towards the inside, and a girl in the reception hurriedly followed. If this is false, they will be punished. As soon as I entered the gate, I saw a crowd of people inside, forming a group, and there were many people standing there cursing. Is this the CEO of GFN Electronics? Is this the virtue? Bah, it's so humming disgusting, and a phone call made the company go bankrupt. It's so awesome, make a phone call. This is too arrogant, it's not young and frivolous, it's a villain's ambition. I didn't know it before, but now it seems that it's all those people who are blowing it. What kind of power can this kind of thing have? Hearing these words, Lu Feng's face turned green. He was just about to walk into the crowd to see which great god was here to harass him. Before he could get rid of the crowd, he met Huang Yawei first. The two looked at each other, a little confused. Aren't you in there? What are you doing here? Lu Feng wondered. Logically speaking, his identity should be the beginning of the conference, then the host's announcement, then thunderous applause, and then walking out. I came out to see you lecture me, Huang Youwei said angrily. I just arrived too, Lu Feng wanted to cry without tears. Let's go, Lu Feng pulled the crowd and walked inside. Mr. Yan, who was in the crowd, had already spit out his saliva and said with a full posture, and said solemnly, I will put my words here, I have completed the electronics industry, and the next step is to pave the way for the machinery industry. In the future, the automobile will definitely be a high-profit industry, so to seize the opportunity, I will open a small factory, test the water, and make auto parts. If you give me a face and take care of the business, you will give me a peach, and I will return it with Li. Lu Feng looked at the three of them carefully. This image was really disgusting. He couldn't help but said, Mr. Lu, stop. Who are you? Dare to interrupt President Lu's speech, are you tired of living? The assistant next to him scolded fiercely. You are limited to 3 seconds to get away. If President Lu gets angry, a phone call can make your company go bankrupt. Believe it or not. Hearing such mindless words, Lu Feng's scalp tingled, and he said, Mr. Lu, you said that the electronics industry has no future. Can you be more specific? Why is there no future? Mr. Yan glanced at Lu Feng, this young man of the same age as himself, standing there neither humble nor arrogant, his eyes shone with light, giving people a deep and intelligent feeling. Although young, but very deep. Can you handle it? That's right, he is the chairman of GFN Electronics. Who are you? Someone next to him helped. What do you know? People who don't understand are better than you. You're nothing. It's funny to question the CEO of a large corporation. People have succeeded, and they have found their own way. Have you been able to compare? Although many people are disgusted by the current Lu Feng, what Lu Feng did not expect is that many people help him to speak, which is an eye-opener for Lu Feng. I heard before that when you are successful, it is fragrant to fart, and now he has really experienced this kind of brainless. Mr. Lu is so powerful, tell me, let me ask you for advice, Lu Feng forced, will you know? The other party was in a hurry, but so many people watched and murmured for a while, because that TV market is already saturated. Yes, that's it. There were people applauding. Lu Feng's head was full of question marks. He applauded when he said anything. It was a brainless flattery. In your eyes, electronics are equal to televisions. Lu Feng held back his smile and asked, what is a computer? Air conditioners, fans, radios, pagers, and computers are not electronics? Let me tell you the most basic the concept of electronics, all the use of circuits, resistors, and electricity are considered electronic products. Of course, there will be many subfields. Electrons are essentially subatomic particles with negative charges. When electrons flow freely from the nucleus, they are electricity. After electrons combine with other molecules, they can generate magnetism, rays, radiation, etc. It is used in medical treatment, astronomy, and signal transmission. Electronics is a very large field, and you actually think that electronics are TVs. After Lu Feng finished speaking, everyone present became quiet. He didn't expect that the name of the electronic product came from this way, and it contains so many things. Mr. Yan was a little confused. He understood every word of what he said just now, but he couldn't understand what it meant when he put it together. High-speed text handwriting returns to the 1989 chapter list.